Yiratzon Parashat Vayakel Pkudei, the ending of Sefer Shmot. Yiratzon Shalimud Yel Refuah Tanya Bat Hoda Margalit, Yosef Yair ben Aviv Achava, Rav Sivan ben Sima, Lea bat Metel betoch Kol Shar Cholei Yisrael. There are two important things that we're addressing in this time. The first is the ending of Sefer Shmot, of Parsha Vayakel Pekudei, and the second is the transition from Purim to Pesach. And every year, these two are very close to each other and very linked. So we want to try together in this year to make a relationship between this transition from Purim to Pesach and the ending of Sefer Shmot. The ending of Sefer Shmot causes us to ask the most important question that the Barbanel asks. And he says that the entire Parsha Vayakel Pekudei is really just a summary that can be said in one sentence. After the thought that we saw in Parshat Truma Tetzaveh, the idea of the Mishkan, we spoke about the concept, what it's going to be made out of. We had two full Parsha dealing with the thought of the Mishkan. And the repetition of Vayakel Pekudei isn't really needed. You could just say that they did what they thought, and that's it. But for some reason, we need to go into detail in every single aspect of what they did, even though it's all just another repetition of what we already said. So that's the first question in the end of Sefer Shmot. But the second is the timing. Sefer Shmot, a book which dealt from the lowest to the highest. We started off Sefer Shmot in galut, in exile, in murder. We were being destroyed day by day. And we finished Sefer Shmot with the Mishkan that Hashem is always with you. So it's a transition from the lowest to the highest. Why do you finish that transition with the most boring two parshot ever? They're boring just because there's just so many details, but you've already said them. So that boring ending is something that we have to realize. Why is that the climax and the ultimate, the highest level of a Sefer that's taken us all the way from the depths of slavery to the greatness of redemption? So again, the two questions on the end of Sefer Shmot is, why do we need to repeat the actions if we already heard the thought of the Mishkan? And the second is, how is this the ending of a book that went from the lowest to the highest? In order to answer that question, there's one halacha that we should learn together. The halacha says at the beginning of Hilchot Pesach, the first halacha of Hilchot Pesach, and the first halacha is sort of the transition and the entrance code into the concept of Pesach. And there we learn Sho'alin b'Hilchot Pesach kodem la Pesach shloshim yom. The first halacha of Pesach is that Pesach does not start on Pesach. For many people, Pesach is the night of the Seder. For others, it's when we start cleaning our house. For the halacha, it's 1 month before. Sho'alin b'Hilchot Pesach shloshim yom kodem Pesach. 30 days before. So the Mishnah Berurah starts to count and says something in 4 words that sort of isn't really needed, but maybe gives the secret of what this halacha is saying. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Siv Katan Bet Shloshim Yom Umatchilin Miyom HaPurim Atzmo. Any of us who know how to count to 30 could go from Yudalid Nisan, which is the day that Pesach really starts, and we do Korban Pesach. 30 days before is Yudalid Adar. Yudalid Adar is Pesach. What is the need the Mishnah Berurah feels to emphasize that these 30 days are linked back to Yom HaPurim Atzmo? And I think in the secret, really the question is, what is the transition from Purim to Pesach? And in order to understand it, we have to ask ourselves, what is the defining concept of Purim? And what is the defining concept of Pesach? Purim is defined through 3 words, Ad Delo Yada. The concept of Purim is no limits. Do what you want, go where you want, feel what you want. It's where everything is possible. The lowest Jew becomes the highest Jew. The highest Jew becomes the lowest Jew. The chaver that can't deal with the simcha don't even know where to go. They're hiding behind tables. So you come into Purim and you say it's a chag of Ad Delo Yada. And really the experience of Purim is an experience of thought. And how do we think where we want to go? It's about ratzon. It's dealing with the thought process of where you want to get to, but it is not active. The Chag of Purim, you do not need to do anything physical to prepare. And on the day itself, all you need to do is just let go of all your limitations. Then you come in Pesach, the next Chag, and it's all about limits. You cannot eat 90% of what you were eating yesterday. You have to clean your house for 2 weeks before. There's no more anti or opposites between Purim and Pesach. Purim is free. Go, do, think, want, have fun. Pesach is stringent. Laws, rules, 1 second. Adiel came home from school, said, I won the game. Said to Adiel, what game did you win? Said, I was the only one that did the matzah in 17 minutes and 59 seconds. It's that 1 second, those mini rules. So they're so different. Says the Mishnah Brura, there's a link between Purim and Pesach. Pesach begins on Purim. And you are not allowed to separate these experiences. Purim teaches you the thinking of what you want, and Pesach is direct link to Purim. That's why Pesach starts on Purim. The idea of Pesach is not rules. The idea of Pesach is not limits. The idea of Pesach is how can someone accomplish what they want. On Purim, you realize what you want. Pesach says the rules are linked to the dream. They are not separated from each other. Purim is teaching you what you want, and Pesach is teaching you how to get there. So I think that what the Mishnah Berurah is teaching us is that in the essence of Pesach and Purim, we're going in a journey which is, if you don't have a dream, you'll despise halacha. If you don't have a goal, you'll despise school. If you don't have a dream, you're gonna feel belittled by teachers and parents. But if you start to have a dream, then you'll realize the only way to get there is to define limits. I have a dream next year to be an assistant coach of a basketball team. And the reason is simple. Because there you can see the work between Purim and Pesach. The chevra that get into the basketball team want one thing and one thing only. They want to become a unit that can do what's unimaginable. And all of them know that if they're not there every single day at practice at 5:45 a.m., they're not on the team. Because the real experience of a dream is how many limits are you willing to put on yourself. And it's not contradicting each other. The people that feel a contradiction between themselves and halacha is because they don't have a dream. The dream is, if you want something, it must be brought down into limits. You can't just make a challah for Shabbos. You need the rules. And the rules are building the dream. But without the dream, the rules are just strangling you. Comes the end of Sefer Shemot and says what you have to realize is the ultimate highest level of redemption is when you feel the freedom of limits. You want to build a house for Hashem? I want to see you build every single piece of wood with the right hammer, with the right color, exactly like that. The idea of Truma Tetzaveh was the thought, the idea, the dream. But the real redemption is to realize that dreams are measured with how many limits and how many rules and how many restrictions you create in order to make the dream a reality. So when we enter into the end of Sefer Shemot, we're answering both these questions. Why do we have to repeat Vayakal Pikudei? Because this is the opposite to Egypt. Egypt was a world of limits in order not to dream. The whole idea of Paro was Ya'avdu ve'al yish'u b'divrei shaker. I don't want them to dream, so they're going to work. And they believed in limits. And we end Sefer Shmot with limits after a dream. So there are two perceptions that you can see Pesach. Pesach on its own, you could ask any of the chaver that clean the house, that all the families, it's not that fun. But if you realize the link that Pesach really starts on Purim, because of the great dream of Purim, we get into the experience of Pesach. So the bracha as we enter into the end of Sefer Shmot, and to the transition into Pesach, is to recognize that there are two experiences of limits. The Galut of Mitzrayim is where you have limits in order not to dream. The end of Sefer Shmot is that after the dream of Truma and Tetzaveh, we experience the limits as a ability to realize that true dreams are not ideas, but they're translated into the most minor details of life. Shabbat Shalom.